What is going on YouTube? It is FlopFish here, and welcome to ChelCast episode number 2. Today we are going to be going over my mid-season playoff predictions and playoff brackets right now. It's going to be a bit fun, going to be a bit silly because, with the West and stuff, but anyways, a little bit about the gameplay. As always, you're going to see me watch a replay, my second goal of this game, which is a very bad goal. You're going to see me watch it with no intentions of skipping it, and that's because he skips over one that I wanted to watch after he watched his. I really wanted to see the goal I scored, especially after he watched that one. I'm just like, okay, well, it's 1-for-1, it's kind of fair, and he decides to skip through it by pressing start. So if you're going to watch your own replay, be prepared to watch someone else's. End of story. And when you do that, I'm going to make you watch one of mine. So anyways, on to the actual predictions here. And we will start off in the East Conference. And so right now we have Montreal in the lead with 40 points, Pittsburgh in second with 40 points. Montreal has one game less played, so they get the first seed. Carolina with 31 with the Southeast Division lead. Boston with 39 right on Montreal's heels. Ottawa with 32. New Jersey with 31. Same with Toronto. Winnipeg with 30. New York with 28. And the Islanders with 27. Philly with 25. And then the Washington Capitals, Tampa Bay Lightning, and Buffalo Sabres with 23. Then Florida with 20. Florida is going to have the worst record. We'll get them out of the way right now. And then in the first seed in the East, at the end of the 48 games, is going to be the Boston Bruins. And it's not going to surprise a ton of people, but with the couple games in hand on Montreal and 3 games in hand on Pittsburgh, I just think they'll be able to win the one game they need there and keep an even record through the rest, matching Pittsburgh and Montreal step for step in order to win this. So that means Boston goes in first place, and Pittsburgh isn't going to be challenged by anyone in their division either. Sorry, New Jersey, I just don't see what you have what it takes. And so Pittsburgh's going to finish the number 2 seed in the East, and number 3 Carolina, although Washington's making a bit of a surge here, and Winnipeg is actually making a bit of a surge here as well. This will be interesting how it plays out. It's going to be tough to see between Winnipeg and Carolina. It's going to be a tightly contested battle here for that division, and I think Carolina is going to be able to hold off. Barely. It's going to come down to the last day, which will be a pretty exciting day for hockey this year, especially with the shortened season, so we're going to be in for a treat there. But yeah, so Carolina's going to finish in the number 3 seed with the division spot. And in the number 4 seed, we're going to have the Montreal Canadiens, because they just barely lost out to Boston. And then in the number 5 seed, we are going to have the Ottawa Senators. There's just such a big gap already between the 3 teams above them that the 2 teams above them, Boston and Montreal, that they can actually compete with, that I don't see them going anywhere above. But I also don't see them dropping, and they're going to finish in a solid 5th place there. 6th place, this is going to be a little bit surprising here, but it is going to be the Winnipeg Jets, and I think they really have what it takes in this season to make the playoffs, which will be great, absolutely great hockey in the MTS Center. The fans will be very loud and annoying, like they did that Blue Jays chant a couple days ago, and the Leafs were losing pretty badly there. Found that pretty funny, but on to the number 7 spot, and this is where things get interesting. It looked as though at the start of the year Toronto was going to make the playoffs. However, Toronto's goaltending's fallen apart a little bit. Their defense hasn't been as great, and they've overall just been slumping as a whole, and that's kind of worrisome, and I don't see them fixing that unless they acquire a little bit of defensive help in the playoffs. And I think they're a top 4 defenseman away, and at least a number 2 center away from making the playoffs, because they've got to get. I don't see Bozak being able to carry the load in order for them to make the playoffs this year, and it's just they need that number 1 center, and so the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to miss the playoffs this year, and that's kind of the first interesting point. The second one is going to be between the 7th seed, in my mind, between 2 teams, New Jersey and the Islanders. And the reason why I don't include New York in this is I don't know if New York's really going to be able to pull it off. I don't know what it is, but I just don't see something in their game that says, you know, we're gonna make the playoffs this year. Lundqvist has been good, but there's something that's worrisome about that team that I just don't have that feeling. I think they're really hurting from the trade for Rick Nash. Even though Nash has been great for them, I think Anisimov and Dubinsky and well, they both played pretty big roles, and Eriksson didn't have much of a role, but it was one of those trades that's just, I think it took away a bit of their depth. And yeah, so I don't think they're going to be able to make the playoffs, which I'm going to slot New Jersey in at that 7 spot. I think they'll be able to hold off the team in the 8 spot, which is going to be the New York Islanders, hanging on, getting in thanks to John Tavares, Matt Molson, Mark Streit, and Michael Grabner. I think they're going to be able to sneak in this year, you know, and even though they might not make any deadline acquisitions or anything, they've got a fairly decent team so far, and I think Johnny T is going to put the team on his back like he's been doing for a lot of the year, and they're going to sneak into the playoffs at the 8th seed. So that's the Eastern Conference. Let's move down to the West, and we've got Chicago at 47, Anaheim at 43, Vancouver at 32, St. Louis at 32, Los Angeles, Minnesota, and San Jose at 30, Phoenix and Detroit at 29, Nashville at 28, Dallas at 27, Columbus at 26 points, Edmonton at 25, and both Calgary and Colorado at 24 points. And, you know, the West is going to change dramatically to me. Not like super dramatically, but enough that's kind of like, what? And the first big change that a lot of people kind of seem to have a general consensus on, actually, somewhat, is that the Anaheim Ducks are going to be the top seed in the West, and I fully agree with that. And the reason why is that the Ducks have been really solid all year long, and if they manage to keep on to Corey Perry here, depending on if there's a trade that they get a good return on, I see them as being a really strong team, and a team that's going to be able to win. Now, that means they're going to get the top spot, and they're going to have the President's Trophy to go along with that. So, Anaheim, you not only win the top spot in the Western Conference, you also get the Canucks Trophy, as I like to call it, the President's Trophy. And then that means Chicago, no offense to Vancouver or St. Louis or LA or any other team, Chicago's getting number 2 because they've got a huge lead already, especially like Vancouver and St. Louis, most realistic 2 teams with a chance to catch up to them, and they've got a 15-point lead. That's 8 games, and 8 games for Vancouver puts them at 34, which means they don't really have a chance at that second spot. That means they only have 14 games to play with. That they have to win 8 more games out of 22 than Chicago, which is going to be pretty tough to do, and I don't see that happening. So Chicago's at number 2, and Vancouver is going to fight off Minnesota. It's going to be a good race, but I think Vancouver is going to be able to pull this off and hold on to that number 3 seed. So it's going to be Chicago, Anaheim, Vancouver with their divisions. And then in the number 4 seed, this is where it's going to get a little bit interesting here. And it's going to be a very tightly contested tie between, well, not tie, but like 1 point separation, 2 points between St. Louis and LA. And I'm gonna have to give this edge. I'm gonna have to give the edge in the regular season to the LA Kings. I think they'll just get enough points in order to come ahead of LA to get that, or ahead of St. Louis to get that 4th spot. And so LA is gonna have 4th seed. St. Louis is gonna have 5th seed. It's gonna be a great playoff matchup. And then as we travel down into the 6th seed, this is where we get a little bit interesting here, as there's a bit of a long log jam between Dallas and Minnesota. Even Columbus you can throw in there, but I think they're just a little bit too far out right now to consider them. Otherwise I probably would if they were at 27 points. But I am going to have to say, looking at it right now, thinking about the teams, I'm going to have to say that Minnesota holds down that number 6 spot. I think it's going to be tightly contested between them and Phoenix, but I think Minnesota is going to be able to hold on to that spot. And at the 7th spot is going to be the Phoenix Coyotes. I think they're going to be able to pull it off, and they've got a decent team. They haven't been getting great goaltending, but I have a feeling Mike Smith's going to find his game again, and he's going to be rock solid again. And then at the 8th spot, this is a very tough pick because realistically, anyone from Dallas to San Jose is a worthy contender of this, even Columbus. You could even technically say Edmonton, but I just think Edmonton's a little bit too far away. Same with Columbus. I think Dallas is going to finish 9th, but San Jose is going to get 8th. And I don't see Detroit really having that team to rally around them. Neither do I see Nashville. I think San Jose is going to be able to hold down that 8th place spot, 8th seed, with some solid goaltending from Niemi, who's right now he's my Vezina winner because he's just absolutely rock solid in net. So let's get into the playoffs and let's go back to the East. So in the first round we have Boston and the Islanders. Now this is going to be a tighter series than everyone thinks, but at the same time it's going to be a fairly, I want to say, easier win for Boston, and it's going to be Boston in 5 games with a couple 2-goal wins. And yeah, so Boston 5 over the Islanders in the first round. Islanders did make the playoffs, but they just couldn't overpower Boston. And if they're going to upset Boston, the key is going to be goaltending and John Tavares. John Tavares will literally have to take the team and put it on his back, in my opinion, in order for them to go anywhere in the playoffs. And they're going to have to spend at the trade deadline, which I really don't think they're going to do. Now the next matchup, a little bit more interesting, in Pittsburgh and New Jersey. This one's definitely something that a lot of people think is going to be tighter than what it's going to be. I think a lot of people would probably have this going 7 games, but I'm going to say it's going to go a solid, I'm going to say 5 games, just because New Jersey's goaltending hasn't been great this year, no matter who they're putting in net, and I just don't see them doing that well. And Pittsburgh's just going to overpower them with offensive firepower despite Marc-Andre Fleury struggling. So Pittsburgh's going to win that in 5. Next up we have a very intriguing matchup between two Southeast combatants here. We have the Carolina Hurricanes facing off against the Winnipeg Jets. And before their realignment goes on, they decide to get one last little rivalry matchup in here. And Winnipeg's going to take this one in 6 games due to some great goaltending. And I honestly think that Winnipeg's got a fairly good chance to win if they keep up their goaltending. So that's going to be Winnipeg over Carolina in the 3rd versus 6th seed. And then in the 4v5 we have Montreal and Ottawa. This series is going to go the distance, and thanks to the play of a rookie named Brendan Gallagher, Montreal is going to manage to take this first round in a tightly contested 7-game series that features great goaltending and some nice goals and some overall great games from both teams. So now we're moving into the semifinals within the conference for those teams, and we are going to be having the first round matchup of Boston versus Winnipeg. Now, if there's any team, in my opinion, that's going to be able to beat the Bruins in a 7-game series that's ranked 5th seed or below, it is going to be the Winnipeg Jets, just because they have the size needed to do it. They have the size, they have the skill, and if Pavlik plays a half-decent game in net, I have a feeling they're going to be able to pull off the upset of the Bruins in 7 games. So that's one of the first upsets in the playoffs here, and that's going to be a very good series to watch. But I think Andrew Ladd and Evander Kane are going to play really well in that series, and I don't think Boston's going to be able to hold on to them and beat them. And so yeah, so Winnipeg in 7 games over Boston in the 2nd round. Now the next matchup is going to be Pittsburgh versus Montreal, and I think Fleury's just gonna be absolutely brutal. I don't think Price will be a lot better in this game. Crosby's gonna play well, but I don't think he's going to play well enough for the entire team to win the series. And I think Montreal is going to find a little bit of a way of pulling off a bit of an upset here and beating Pittsburgh in 7 games. Once again, it's going to be a very good series to watch once those two teams get there, hopefully. And yeah, so once again, Montreal is going to beat Pittsburgh in 7 games, and Boston is going to lose to Winnipeg in 6 games, setting up a Montreal-Winnipeg conference final, and that is going to be so noisy, and is going to be a very, very, very good series, and it's going to be very, very tight. And honestly, a 6th seed got to the Stanley Cup final last year, and unless Montreal can make a pickup at the deadline, I don't see them getting through. So I'm going to have to... this is a tough one. No, I'm going to say Montreal is going to take this in 6 games. 7 games, not 6 games. 7 games. Just because Montreal is just they're gonna get some better goaltending from Price. They're gonna have more offensive firepower, and I think Brandon Price is gonna be a very key factor in that playoff series. As long as they can stay healthy, Montreal is gonna take that, which sends Montreal into the Stanley Cup Finals. And then in the West, we have the first round matchup of Anaheim-San Jose. This is the first main upset due to the fact of Antti Niemi. I don't think the Ducks are gonna get that good of goaltending here, and I think Nemo's going to pull out some pretty good games here, and San Jose is going to shock the Anaheim Ducks in 6 games. So now we're going on to the next matchup, which is Chicago and Phoenix, and this one's going to be a very interesting series. Once again, I don't see an upset here yet. Emphasis on the yet, but I think it's going to be a very tight series, and I think Phoenix is going to push it to 6 games, but Chicago is going to find a way to win it. Now, between Vancouver and Minnesota, I think it's going to be a tight series, but at the same time, I think Canucks are going to be able to manage a 6-game victory over Minnesota here. So, Canucks move on, and then we go into St. Louis and LA. LA with the home ice advantage, but St. Louis is going to beat them in 5 games because Jonathan Quick's not going to play well enough to win. So yeah, that's kind of my opinion there. And so St. Louis is going to move on, which means we've got Chicago versus San Jose, and Nemo's going to steal the show in that one. And the Sharks are going to take down the Hawks in 6 games. Don't see the Hawks making it past the semifinals this year. And I think Nemo's got what it takes to stop them, and the San Jose offense is going to click. And yeah, so Sharks are through to the finals. And then we have Vancouver and St. Louis, and if this happens, I'm going to be making a bet on this one probably with someone. But I think it's going to be a tightly contested series, but I think Vancouver's goaltending and offense is going to be a little bit better than St. Louis and push them through to the Stanley Cup Finals. And then in the final little bit here, we have Vancouver versus San Jose, and I think it's going to be very similar to 2 years ago. I think Canucks are going to find ways to win games by 1 goal, and it's going to be a 5-game victory for Vancouver, who then face off against the Canadiens in the Cup Finals. And I honestly think Vancouver is going to click at the right time, kind of like LA last year, and they're going to be able to get past Montreal in 6 games and win it on home ice, meaning Montreal had more points than them, but I think Vancouver is going to be able to win the Stanley Cup this year just because they've got 2 really good goalies. Their team hasn't clicked yet, and when they click, they tend to win big, and I think they'll get past Montreal. But anyways, guys, that's about it for this episode of the ChelCast. Stay tuned for next week. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like. If you have predictions, leave them in the comments below. And if you have suggestions for next week topics, leave them in the comments. Anyways, guys, this has been FlopFish, and take it easy, and peace out, and